We're ready to go. Corporation Town of Kirkland Lake Finance Meeting, Council Chambers, Town of Kirkland Lake, March 12th, 2019. Can we have approval of the agenda?
I have a motion that's moved by Councillor Rick Owen, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens. The council approves the agenda for its finance meeting of March 12th, 2019 as presented.
In favor? Unanimous. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Councillor Owen?
Yeah, I declare a declaration of pecuniary interests on 4 big AF when it comes to the section that deals with water and wastewater, and section G 2 and 3, as I have 2 immediate family members that work in the Waterworks Department.
Thank you, Councillor. Petitions and delegations? None. Reports of municipal officers and communications? CEO and Treasurer.
Sure, if you can come up. The presentation today has been designed to provide council with a background as to both how the finances work, what you have, what you owe, and how it's distributed, and then it will be taken from there into a discussion on the capital. Sherry, for our purposes too, we want to give just enough time for the councillor when we get into waterworks and whatever, just to adjust his schedule then. Thank you. So I'll turn it over to Sherry then.
I believe my understanding is it's not like we're looking for any final decisions tonight. This is just to give everybody an idea of kind of the process. Where do we stand right now? The first sheet we're going to be looking at, it gives you an idea of some of the things you can't even necessarily control because there's either contracts in place or bylaws in place. So I just wanted to start with that. And once again, the broken record just wants to say that anything that's labeled 2018 is not finalized. It's just a draft. It's the best as of the date that it was printed on. So the first one that we wanted to start with is it's just some 2019 budget information. You'll notice that there's one column that says 2019 fixed estimate, and then there's 2018, they're actuals but in the draft. So if we go down that list, the idea being that we just wanted to let you know those are expenses that you're almost committed to. So as far as OPP, there's a contract with the OPP, so that is the number they've provided for 2019. As far as the DSAB, my understanding is it hasn't necessarily been passed yet, but that's the figure that I was provided with as the proposed budget, which I think somebody had mentioned to me that it's to be approved at the next meeting of the DSAB. As far as the garbage, I'll explain a bit on that one. So the number you see under the 2019 fixed estimate amount, that would be 9 months of the year 1 of the contract and 3 months of year 2, just because the contract started October 1st. The reason I didn't put a comparative number in for 2018, and my note 3, it says that it wouldn't be necessarily representative or comparative. The reason I say that is my understanding from last year was that there were issues involved with the garbage. There was a contractor in place, and that contract didn't end up being finished by that contractor. Then there were people coming in. There was equipment being rented instead of a vendor or a contractor necessarily. And then MWRC came in October. So just because the budget numbers would look a little skewed compared to, the assumption was at the time of the 2018 budget that you would have had that same contractor in place for 12 months. That didn't occur. So I do have some numbers here that I could let you know. Sorry, just 1 second. So if I totaled them all up with the regular collection, the blue box, and the disposal at the landfill, you'd be looking at an actual of, say, $1,015,000 as opposed to a budget of $1,067,000. But as I say, it's more the fact that it looks a little off if you were to look at the detailed, because the contracted services was lower than you would have expected, but the equipment rental and hired equipment was a lot higher. So the next one would be the insurance. We do have the invoice for 2019, so that number reflects that. The health unit and the MPAC, there again, those are letters that we receive from those organizations telling us what the town's commitment is for the year. Animal control, that is an actual bylaw and an agreement that was renewed, I believe, in 2018, and it will go to, I believe, 2021. As far as hydro and natural gas and the salaries and benefits, just as an illustrative, and that's what my notes say, it was just for an illustration. Those are, I put in the exact same number. Obviously, they will not be the same number because there's either union agreements that have percentage increases, benefits go up. But like I say, I just wanted to give you an idea for when we get to this bottom number of what you're almost already committed to. As far as the long-term debt, the principal and the interest, there again, I just wanted to give you an idea of what the town actually has outstanding in debt and what the payments would be. And just to quickly run down a few of them, the Aquatic Center, the amount that you see under 2019, that's for a full 12 months, but then the comparative number, the debenture didn't go through, and I believe that was only 3 months. It was October, November, December. As far as Heritage North, that loan will be paid off in May of this year, so that's why the number is almost half of what it was last year. As far as the King George KL Gold, that is a loan that from KL Gold to the town with respect to King George Court capital expenditures that you would have seen on the 2018 capital projects. The loan dollars were not received until 2019, and it's interest-free to be paid over 2 years, each July. The NOHFC, the discrepancy between the two amounts in 2019 and 2018, the town was not making payments in 2018, not principal interest payments. What they were paying was accrued interest. So the $32,000 you see there was payments that were being made as sorry.
Just for clarification, because we did ask the question, that is for the sawmill. Okay, it flows through from the client, through us, back to the funding agency. And it does not affect our ability to apply for other funds or anything like that.
And yes, so the payments have been reinstated as of January 1st of 2019, so that the $137,000 reflects a full year of payments. And for the rest of them, well, the public works equipment, that was due to the fact that we used to have a loan for vehicles and equipment, but now the one was paid off in 2018, so we only have the one. And so what we just wanted to kind of give you an idea, if you were to take the 2018 operating budget of 25 million, you're already almost committed to 21 million, sorry. And that's like 84%. So you've got the rest of the 16% to work with. And like I say, it would probably be even less than that because obviously the salaries and the benefits will change. So like I say, it was just an exercise to kind of give you that idea overall. And we can do the same with the waterworks and the wastewater. Obviously, oh, sorry. Okay. So for the waterworks and the wastewater, obviously the aqua, that's a contract, so that's per the agreement. The insurance, that's just broken out from the invoice that we've already received. Hydro, natural gas, salaries and benefits, once again, same thing. I've just used the number for illustrative purposes. And as far as the long-term debt, that is related specifically to waterworks. There isn't any for wastewater currently. And once again, you're looking at wastewater, that would be 77% of your budget, and the waterworks, 77%, the wastewater would be roughly 75. So those were the items that we wanted to go over for that. I don't know if, do you want to do questions based on this document or at the end, or?
Council? Let's carry on then.
Patrick, just to confirm, you said 77% of the, for the calculation,
For the waterworks?
waterworks, 77% of waste management.
It's actually, it would be of the 2018 waterworks budget,
Sorry,
yeah.
yeah, sorry.
I'm just gonna go and get Councillor Owen to see if he has any questions on the other.
so for the next one, it's the continuity of the reserves and the reserve funds. Once again, it's just to give you an idea of where everything stands in draft at December 31st, 2018. And I'll just run through them quickly with just a couple comments. So the Centennial Committee one, I'll just caution that that's one of the entries that I know I still have to make. The Centennial Committee is a committee of the town, which means that we actually have to consolidate their activity for 2018 into our records. So I'm currently trying to go through that and just make sure that I pick everything up to be consolidated. But that amount, the 29,000, it was a carry, that's actually the same balance as it was at the end of 2017, because I haven't adjusted anything for that yet. As far as the infrastructure capital reserve, I just wanted, so when you see the transfers too of the $691,000, that basically reflects if you were to take the 2018 capital project schedule that we're gonna look at later, that would be all the ones where I said we transferred this at the end of the year. So that's why it's so high. It's because of all the unfinished projects. As far as the Kirkland District Health Center, just quickly, what happens is the town basically contributes an amount of $11,250 per year. It's based on an April 1st to March 31st year end. But my understanding from looking in the records is that it was behind for several years. So that 42,000 represents the 15-16, 16-17, 17-18, and then an accrual for April of 18 to December of 2018. As far as the landfill, the $112,000 was a budget amount in the 2018 budget, and what it is it's supposed to reflect an amount towards the post-closure of the landfill. So it's just putting money away, because if you looked on the balance sheet for the town, you will see that there is a post-closure liability, and that amount is going towards that. It would fund that. As far as the election, you'll notice it's now at 0, because this, in 2018, it was an election year, so as part of the 2019 operating budget, you will want to consider how much you would like to put in. Usually what happens is you roughly estimate what you think it'll cost in a year and just divide it by the 4 years and put that amount in each year. So the other thing I wanted to caution is now, because we haven't finished 2018, I don't know if there is a surplus or a deficit, but depending on what happens, you will need to take that into account when you do your 2019 budget, because if there's a deficit, you have to put that into and account for it in your 2019 budget. The other thing is, though, if there is a surplus, the standard, if you will, always was that in the resolution that council passed in December, it says if there's any surplus, that you will put it into the reserve for working funds or reserve for working capital. That's where that amount would go. But I haven't calculated it yet, because it is quite the calculation, and I'd rather do it when I think we're close to the end. As far as the parkland, that was $100,000 that the town received in a grant, and it's been it was a bylaw from council in 2018 to put that amount in for the Parkland Reserve Fund. So there is actual cash for that one in a bank account. For the rest of them, and I don't know if you want me to hold off talking about the water, wastewater ones, or, oh, go ahead, Bob.
No, I'm just following up on another question that we received. With the parkland money, when the federal government was celebrating the 125 years, we had applied for money that was supposed to go towards Civic. It came in 2 years later, after Civic was completed. Council of the Day put it into the reserve fund. The idea was for repairs, maintenance, upgrades, development of parkland. And you will see some of those items in your capital budget later on. No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, so as far as the 2 reserve funds for water, wastewater, did you want me to? So the only things I just wanted to mention on those is, obviously for the wastewater capital one, the $491,000 that got transferred in, as we've mentioned before, $413,000 of it was the insurance proceeds on the old, the roof that collapsed on the old sewage treatment plant. And the other portion of it is, it's just an estimate, but so far it looks like there's roughly a $75,000 surplus in the wastewater fund, if you like. And so that's why it's 491. It's the 413 plus the 75 plus some interest on the reserve fund. I would caution that the $425,000 that shows as the ending balance, Of that amount, 37,500 of it is designated because of the 2018 capital budget. That amount was originally going to be funded from that, but we haven't spent it yet, so, or the project's not done yet. As far as the waterworks, there's not going to be a whole lot left there. It shows $43,000, almost $44,000, but of that, there is $41,000 of it committed to 2018 capital projects, so that'll leave you less than $3,000 in that fund by the time we're done. So do I go get Rick, or? Okay. Okay, so on the second page of that document, it's what they call obligatory reserve funds, or if you were looking on the balance sheet, you would find it under deferred revenue. So what basically that means is the town's been provided with funds, but that is very specific as to what you can spend it on. There's usually time limits, eligible costs, ineligible costs. So as far as the gas tax, which is probably one of the ones people are most familiar with, the town's allocation for 2019 will be around $484,000, which would give us ending balance at the end of 19 of being $596,000. But of that, approximately $53,000 is still to fund the elevator project at the complex, which was a carryover from 2018. As far as the OSIF funding, the allocation for 2019 that we've been told so far would be $598,000, which would give you 1.2 at the end. However, we would caution that in previous years, this funding was designated for the Swastika Sewer Upgrade Project. So should that continue, those funds are designated for that as it stands right now. As far as the Main Street revitalization, those funds were received in 2018. They haven't been spent yet. There again, there are certain specific eligible projects that you could do that on, and I believe there's at least one project in the 2019 capital projects that could be used for that.
I'd like to jump in because we had a question on that. The OSIF, there are two components to that. One is OSIF formula. OSIF formula is a 5-year commitment from the federal provincial government to the municipalities. It's your allotment, and you can spend it as you see fit. As Sherry mentioned, starting in about 2017, they were attributing, well, from 2016, sorry, they were attributing the OSIF formula to be used as the municipality's share for the Swastika project. We'll be covering that again later. You're going to run into OSIF again when it's OSIF project. That you'll see as a Wood Streets project. That's an application that the town puts in and comes back at 90% funding. So there are two components to that. The Main Street revitalization, as Sherry said, there's a timeline on that, 2020. That one will come back within the capital budget, where we're proposing that one of the criteria for the Main Street funding is that it should be activity that or an investment that benefits the community as a whole. Well, you have issues with sidewalks downtown. We're proposing, and this is very preliminary, that money could be used for that. So that, just to give you an idea of some idea how that fits in. Were there other questions on that?
Will, when you say Main Street, you mean Government Road?
Main Street is just the name of the funding program itself. It does have to be used in the downtown core, though.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next one to look at is, it's just the pie charts. The reason I chose the 2017 is because it is the last audited numbers that we have, so that's why I chose that. It is available on the website under, I believe it's the 2018 tax booklet, that is included. And just while I'm thinking of it, because this does talk about where the town gets its funding from or its revenues, I meant to mention on the first working paper that we looked at, and we talked about the $21 million basically that's already committed. Just to put it in perspective, you get 6.2 million in your OMPF versus the 21. So this is where the rest of the money is coming from. So you have your municipal taxation from other governments, which is basically your payments in lieu. You've got your user charges, Government of Canada grants, Province of Ontario non-specific, which that would be your OMPF. The Province of Ontario specific, those are grants that could be something as simple as a summer student or any other project that say a library grant, a museum grant, anything like that. And then other would be things like donations, interest income, and things like that. And so, like I say, obviously the biggest one is the municipal taxation. And then if we flip down to the municipal expenditures, you can see where the town spends its money. And so, social and family services is a large one, as is the environmental. So when you think of, sorry, very quickly, water and wastewater, okay, it's in there. And social and family services, that would be, say, your Tech Pioneer residents. That would be the main one in that. So like I say, it's just to give an idea of where what money comes in and in what percentages and what's coming out.
Yes, Councilor Owen.
Yeah, I'm feeling dry because I can't hear anything but water. But just a quick question, what does transportation services include?
That would be, and actually a lot of it's the roads, and it breaks it out into different categories, but the other ones, just to make sure I don't miss any. It would be your roads, your winter control, your parking, your street lighting, and your airport. Okay? Okay. Okay.
Continue.
Okay, so the next one is the long-term debt. So once again, this was more for just information purposes, just to give you an idea of what does the town owe. I used the date of January 1st just because I wanted to get the Kale Gold loan into that, because as I said, we didn't actually get the money until 2019. So you can see at the top, the Heritage North, that balance, it's going to be paid off in May of this year. You've got the King George Kale Gold one, 2 payments, split evenly between 2019 and 2020, and it's interest-free. You've got the waste carts, the LED lighting, the NOHFC, which we have discussed, the public works equipment, the wastewater equipment at Tech Pioneer Residence, the aquatic center, and the cemetery. And the cemetery is a bit of for lack of a better, it's a little bit of an oddball, because I think the history on that is they wanted to build the columbarium. Is that how you, okay. And in order to fund it, so it's being paid back as people buy niches inside of it, then a certain portion, it's $291.90 goes towards paying that loan back. So so there's no set, it's not like every year you're going to be paying back a certain amount, and you're paying back based on what people are paying for those niches. So so I'm not sure what else, well, actually, the one thing I did want to mention is that there is an annual debt repayment limit for the town. It's set, the ministry sets how you calculate that. They actually have recently sent out the 2019 one. The issue there is it's always based on previous years. So the one we got for 2019 is actually based on the 2017 financial information return. The important part of that is it did not contain the repayments for the Kale Gold loan or the pool, which makes a difference in how much money you could actually go and borrow right now. So when we get to the capital, that's something that maybe we can look at further. But just to let you know, that is always a constraint on the town as to how much that they can borrow. So I didn't know, is there any other questions on that one, or? Okay, so as far as the 2018, all I wanted to do was, we did end up making some changes. So I did want to give you the most recent version of the 2018 capital. And this kind of goes with the next part, which is the 2019, because we had so many projects that are carried forward into 2019. So unless there's any questions on that one, or? So just to mention for the 2019 capital, and here again, I don't know, just a quick comment to do with, if we're going to get towards setting water, wastewater rates, you're gonna have to look at capital. So okay, and so that's all we wanted to say is, so now's the time to start thinking about the 2019 capital, not just about water, wastewater, but it takes into all the departments. The other thing being that what you decide to do for your capital will dictate what you decide to do with your operating, because whether it's financing, whether it's putting money into or taking money out of reserves and reserve funds. So that's kind of why we had this set up the way we did. So we wanted to give you an idea what you already owe, what you do have in reserves and reserve funds. And so like I say, now if we want to go and look at the capital, so. And we did, just to mention too, when we asked the departments to give us their capital requests for the year, we did indicate, please try and keep them to the ones that are priorities. You will notice on the sheet, we have some that we asked them, give them to us, but cross them off, but we also wanted council to realize what could be coming up. The best example is, say, the pumper truck. I mean, okay, it doesn't have to be purchased this year, but it's a big expense, and it will come in the future. So at least then you have an idea of what could be coming down in future years. So, so if we can just start, the top part of the schedule is basically just, it's a rehash of the 2018 projects, so we will go through that. As far as that whole renovation with the washroom, the council doors, and the changes to council chambers, it's actually gonna end up coming in under budget. So that will leave an unspent portion of $11,250. So right now, it's sitting in the reserve for infrastructure capital. That could potentially be reallocated for another project, because I know there are 2 carryovers from 2018 that are now going to be over budget. So I mean, technically that could fund something like that. So it's all in that same reserve fund, so. As far as the fire, the building assessment design for the new building, I believe it was determined that it wouldn't be beneficial to perform the assessment at this time, but maybe consider a change to the project to use the funds to determine the cost of designing a new building when applicable. So for right now, those funds have been set aside. They're in the reserve for infrastructure capital. As far as the repairs to the aerial, once again, carry over the exhaust system for the hall. I think my understanding is that they're currently waiting for somebody to come and look and assess it. So that's where they're at on that one. The building repairs for the roof, once again, it's just being carried over. The rescue truck, there was $75,000 allocated in the 2018 capital budget. The consideration now could be to purchase a 3/4 ton truck with a slide-out tray instead, and put the remaining funds in a reserve towards the purchase of a pumper truck in the future. So as I say, the funds currently are sitting in the reserve for infrastructure capital, and like I say, whatever council decides, that $75,000 has been set aside as a carryover from 2018.
Sherry, I'm just gonna stop.
Yeah.
Councillor White, does that answer the questions that you had posed regarding, like, with the rescue truck? Because we can bring Rob up if you need further clarification. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so now we're into, there was the truck replacement at the airport. So once again, the funds were put in the reserve, but the trucks have now been received, and my understanding is they are going to be under budget. So, with respect to the landfill, there was $20,000 set aside, and that will be used to purchase the Crown land, and there's actually an additional ask in the 2019 capital budget, which we'll get to when we get into the 19. As far as King George Court, the loan has now been received, so that will it will fund any additional expenses from that happen or that occur in 2019. As far as the accessibility access to physical services, the RFPs to be issued soon for the architectural and structural drawings, and it will likely the town will likely spend only $15,000 in 2019, but the balance would just carry forward because currently it's in the reserve for infrastructure capital. As far as the replacement of the hydro poles at the snow dump, once again, the money is set aside. The downtown handrails, same thing. Sidewalks and accessible parking. That one is a possibility that it would fit in under that Main Street revitalization funding. The truck replacement, the 2 at Public Works, once again, the trucks have been received and it should be come in under budget. With respect to the garage relocation, the location and the process to accomplish it needs actually to be established, but once again, the funds have been set aside. The physical services parking lot repairs, they will, the money is set aside for those, and the truck replacement at the building, once again, under budget, truck has been received now. Okay, do you want me to skip those? Yeah, skip those, okay. The social and family services, so basically it's Tech Pioneer. As far as the TPR generator, my understanding is that it actually is now coming in over budget. So the amount that was set aside at the end of 18 will go towards that, but there is an additional amount. So when we get to the 2019 capital, we can go over that, so. As far as the elevator modernization, that project, as far as we know, that project's on,
I just inquired today, it's about 95% complete, and it's working within the budget as assigned.
as far as the museum, there again, the sidewalks, that's a carryover, and the Heritage North boiler repairs, once again, we put aside the 1756 that wasn't spent, but the project appears that it may come in over budget, so there's an additional ask in the 2019 budget. Okay, so if we start the 2019, so for the information services section, it would be a main firewall replacement, and they estimate that to be $7,000. So I'm not sure how do we want to, do you want me to just go through the projects, or?
Councillors, do you want that? Do you want to just pick out the ones that you have questions on? How would you like to proceed?
Okay, I'll just run through them.
Yeah.
Okay, we can run through them and then afterwards if, okay. So the ones for fire, we're looking at bunker gear, which I believe that's an annual item that they replace their bunker gear. The fire hose for $10,000 and the washer for $5,000. The dryer came last year, so now they need the washer. And then, as I said, you will see the pumper truck is crossed out, but just to let you know, there is a $650,000 price tag on something like that. As far as the police, we do own the building and we do rent out the building and we do get revenue from that building. So for 2019, the ask is, there's a quote for that one, so it's say $5,800 for that. So to supply and install 2 doors. As far as the airport, they're looking to replace some fuel hoses for roughly almost $7,200. My understanding is that currently the ones that they have are 18 years old and the recommended use is only 10 years, so and it's actually a requirement for regulations that they should be replacing them. For the landfill one, the top one, it goes back to what we were talking about, a carryover from the 2018 capital projects. There was a $20,000 carryover. This is an additional amount of $81,408. And it's to do with the MECP order that needs to be rectified by June 2020. My understanding is it's been delayed for several years, so now it has to be in June 2020. And just to let councillors be aware that you will need to budget another $100,000 in 2020 as well to finish that project. And it involves the purchase of some land and some new wells and pumps. And then they have crossed off 2 items, so, but just for your information, a tipping fee booth and the curbside collection event that hasn't been held for several years, but if it were to be, they roughly estimate it would have been $61,000. For roads, we've got the loader, the grader, the backhoe, and the blower. Each one of those items are obviously bigger ticket items, and council would have to consider whether there's trade-ins on the ones that we do have. And whether you want external financing, are we doing levy dollars, or those ones obviously with such a large dollar value, it's the financing will be significant. There's the Balsam Avenue Municipal Drainage Reconstruction for $40,000. There's a rebuild.
Oh, sorry.
The blower, you have $178,000. That doesn't include the loader that goes with it, does it? Or is that?
That's on top there,
That's
Brian.
a separate one, okay.
407.
Okay.
Councillor Owen.
Did we not just get a new grader this year? No? I thought you had one, you were just trying them out. So it's like for next year's budget, so, okay, thanks for clarification.
There's a rebuild for the old breaker of $12,000. There's a mechanics diagnostic computer for just over, or for almost 11. My understanding is that it would be able, it would allow the mechanics to be able to diagnose problems here instead of sending it to Timmins.
And I believe, Steve, you had said that for someone to come down from Timmins, it's about $800 just to show up. That's just the travel, so.
Okay. There's some garage lighting, there's some fixtures that need to be replaced because currently it's out of compliance. And actually, we're now gonna skip over to the Tech Pioneer on page 7 of 9, just to do the water what was after, okay. As far as for TPR, for the HVAC, to replace the rooftop compressor because it's only got 3 out of 4 compressors currently working, so it must be replaced in 2019. There's a bariatric lift. The ladies auxiliary is going to donate 6,000 towards that 12, so the balance would be how we would have to determine the financing for. As far as the bed replacement for the $6,800, this is 100% funded through the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. They have what they call falls prevention funding, and it meets the conditions to be able to fund, or to be able to use the funding for that. As far as the TPR generator, that is a carryover from 2018. However, it has come in, I believe the invoice is already now here, and it came in over what was expected from 2018. So the 4180 is an additional ask for 2019's budget. And you will see that they have crossed off the computer replacements.
Sherry, can I interrupt you when
Yeah.
we get into the recreation and cultural? We have a challenge right now just getting the information in from the complex, but this came through. I was over there today to review some of these. The Civic, the paved walkway is not a critical. The half-ton truck is quite old, from the 1990s. They could make it last for another year, but ideally not. The ventilation in the hockey hall, it could be postponed. The ice plant piping, no. If you recall, we had an ammonia issue earlier last year. This is related to that. Air conditioning in the Blue Line room, that can be postponed. Fitness room equipment replacement, postponed. Ice plant repair, that is a needed item. Boardroom, postponed. Floor scrubber, postponed. Kinross Pond, must be done. It is a health and safety one.
Which retaining walls are they, Wilf?
That's basically those old, the wooden ones that are around the playground areas and that.
Okay.
They were collapsing.
And I seem to remember reading in preparation for this meeting that the oldest truck the rec department has didn't have the highest cost to operate.
Must have been a Toyota.
No, yeah, well, it might be, but, so I think that's something we need to take into consideration, and if I'm remembering the numbers correctly, our newest truck there was actually the most expensive in terms of repairs, so
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
we shouldn't just write off a truck because it's old, is what I'm saying.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so the last 2 items on that is the museum, it's some mobile shelving, and I believe there was a presentation to council at the end of January about that. And so they're hoping to get a grant for it, for say $3,000 of it. They have a one-time donation that they could use $3,000 of, and then it would leave a very small balance that would have to come from, say, even the levy or whatever. It's for artifact management. As far as the Heritage North, that's the additional amount that I had mentioned. It's a carryover project from 2018, but it's estimated to come in over budget. It's not finished yet. So the 3494 is the additional ask for 2019. Okay, so do we want to go back to the water then?
Sherry, do you want me to go up into the 2018 water, or just stop at 2019 water?
I don't know, like, I mean, I don't think many of those projects have been finished either, so they're kind of just we can, it's up to you, but I just,
I think you're covering the 2019 ones, the other ones from the council have been introduced to.
So the top one, and one of the more expensive ones, is the Wood Street Phase 3. Now, the town is trying to get some OSIF funding. It's not yet approved, but there is the potential for 90% funding of that project. And then the 10% remaining, we'd have to determine. It is likely that it could be gas tax money. It would meet the conditions. The other phases did, let's put it that way. The other Wood Street phases did have gas tax funding.
Also, the Wood Street, as you see, is Phase 3. There's a series of projects being built on top of each other, and the idea was to proceed in an orderly fashion. So that way there, instead of skipping around and doing some work here, some work there, and not having the connecting in between, this was designed this way. And Wood Street 1 was what, in 2015, I think 2016, and then in 2017, I think that, yeah, we finished Wood Street 1, 2017. 2018, there was no offer, no application submitted. And this takes you into the next stage for that. It benefits the entire area, in that part of the town.
Okay. There is an ask for 2 3/4-ton trucks replacements, and there is a possibility of using the engineering van as a trade-in, and the request does include the tires and back racks. So as you will notice, though, there are some other projects, some are significant, that have been crossed off. So there's a Comfort Street infrastructure upgrade, the McTavish line brushing, those are 2, and then the Carter dead end system, those are more expensive as well. But however, they have crossed them off as being not a priority for this year, but at least just to have council aware of what is coming up. As far as the ones that we're gonna talk about now, these are the ones that I believe Aqua provides to the town to, as maintenance, or not maintenance, but to maintain the facilities that we do have. To replace the SCADA system, and the bulk of the project will be done in 2020 at an estimated cost of $395. So the 101, almost 102,000 would be the 2019 ask, but just so council's aware, there would be an additional ask in 2020 of the $395, almost $396,000. To replace 4 filter valves for the high lift system and post-treatment, $81,000. The valve chamber rebuild at Chappaquse Tower assessment, $20,000. Replace a loom pump for KO raw water intake, $20,000. Repurging of filters, $8,100. The road torque actuators for high lift system and post-treatment, just one note on that, is that we did have a project that's carrying over from 2018. It was for $39,100. Originally, my understanding is it was for 2, but they have now come up with, I guess, a different way of completing it, and so they actually think that with the additional $6,000 in 2019, they'd actually be able to do 4 instead of just the 2. And then there's a tertiary filter cloth and valve replacement for close to $41,000. There's the North Clarifier rake gearbox. That one actually was an emergency fix, and it is actually in progress as far as I know. The aeration basin transfer pumps, over $10,000, and the Comfort Street pump maintenance for over $10,000 as well. So the only other page left is the very last page, and I'm not sure, Will, if you want to look at that now, or?
I can just give council a brief overview of it. These are projects that, the first one has been on the way since 2017, and it basically is the extension of a sewer system from Swastika to Kirkland Lake. The Swastika plant getting old, the Kirkland Lake plant has the excess capacity, can easily handle that. Your long-term benefits are less of an environmental situation because it does overflow into auto. You do have higher operating and maintenance costs as well as capital costs associated with the Swastika plant. So this is what's before you. The funding, again, is at 2/3, and this is where we have been using the OSIF funding for formula funding that we referred to earlier. The second project is one that has been proposed. It ties into the Kirkland Lake Gold expansion. In order to put up the new shaft and to get to work, they will be requiring municipal services, and to service that, We will also have some demand on our existing infrastructure, specifically to be able to provide the capacity, the volume, the pressure to service Kirkland Lake Gold if there's a large draw, as well as to keep the other industries and that sector of the town safe. So we do have some funding allocated towards that. It has not been determined yet by council if they wish to go ahead with that, but I'm putting those forward as other projects that should be considered by council. We can discuss them further.
Well, the Beaver Hill, Kirkland Gold expansion, the water pressure, will this, I don't know, this hasn't been scoped out yet, so, but will that improve the water pressure for the rest of, Champion's?
I don't think it's going to improve the water pressure. We'd have to be changing quite a few of the pipes all the way through that section, which is way beyond any funding we can get at this point. This will ensure that the capacity is there, however, and the volume. If you recall, last year in July, we had a problem where the gate valves on Beaver Drive, they seized and then broke, flooded, and we wound up having to spend, I think it was about 90,000 roughly on emergency repairs. When that went down, we could not fill up the water tower. We could not ensure water flowing through past that point. And this, if we were to go ahead with this project, those repairs done in 2018 would be covered retroactively. As well, we would replace one of the other critical fail points, which is at the Miners Memorial, similar situation. So this is more on making sure that we're secure, that we can continue to handle the draws on the system in the face of Kirkland Lake Gold and future expansion in that area if necessary.
Other questions? No?
The And I also want to just point out, when we bring the 2019 operating budget, the 2018 actuals and budgeted numbers will also be presented at that point. So if you find it more to your benefit, when we're dealing with the 2019 budget, to ask about the 2018 there, you'll see the comparative, what it was to where it is. Just pointing that out because otherwise you will be asking many of the same questions, I would assume, at this point, potentially. just to give you background, the core of the issue that Sherry's talking about was identified last year, but because we were already in, pretty much in May by the time we had gone through with everything, at the advice of the people we had brought in, it was not something you wanted to try to tear apart and fix at that point. So they said, go ahead with the same process, but it is something, as Sherry says, that really doesn't make sense unless you've been sitting in that chair for an awful long time and following the same process. We want to get away from it. This past year, one of the things we did do is in capital projects, when our own forces are involved, their labor costs are charged to the capital project as well. Whether it can be claimed or not is irrelevant. The point is, we want to know what the actual cost of the project is. So we're moving towards that, but like Sherry says, you have to really be careful. It's like a Gordian knot. You're trying to untie it to understand where the other implications could be. Sometimes, I think, especially for public works, where Sherry was talking about a whole bunch of zeros being budgeted and a big honking sum coming in at a different thing. A lot of that is with equipment as well. So we need to find out how can we change it without screwing it up. Where did it come from? We suspect that a lot of times this was a carried over practice from probably 2 or 3 generations ago that really made a lot of sense to the people that were using it. And it has worked, but the time has come. How do we change it? And we're looking with other municipalities as to how they're managing, particularly for equipment, sometimes with personnel as well. So we'll be bringing some changes forward for that. Sherry, are there other major items that affected the budget? I remember at one point we were talking about, we had come to council, and on that day, we received a notice of a WSIB that was like 25,000. When we came to council, we were, I can't remember who it was, but somebody asked a question, how come your salaries or your salaries and benefits have changed? And the attribution was made to overtime, but it was actually, I think, a $30,000 thing. It was actually 25,000 of that was a WSIB. So if you can identify anything else in the 2018 that came and jolted the numbers in one way or another.
That would be one, and what we try to do is when it's that significant of an amount, we try to book it to, say, the department that it, if we can identify a department, we will book it to that department just to be reflective. The other one is, and this is another one, it'll be probably a larger journal entry, and I'm still working on that one. What happens is at the end of the year, we have to assess, you know, what's the outstanding bank time, what's outstanding vacation or stats or whatever. So there's a liability involved in that. My understanding is at the end of 2017, there was no, the auditors determined that the difference was not material for their purposes, so the entry wasn't made. So I have to make the entry for 18, but I'm not sure what effect that's going to have, because basically I'm dealing with the difference between 2016 and 2018. So there again, you may see some of those drop, like I don't know. So like I say, but there again, it could hit all departments because it depends on what the person and what department they work in, and you know, the difference between what they didn't use in 2016 and the difference between what they didn't use at the end of 2018. So that is another one, but yes, the WSIB and the vacation and things like that.
And the part with the bank time and that really hit the corporation in 2017 because we lost a number of people, and so you had others covering up, and that you probably see that rolling into 2018 as well, because there was replacements didn't come in until March, April, something like that. So you're going to see that effect coming through. Is there questions from council on the 2018 operating recap?
Other than a comment, it's gonna be awfully challenging because, just because of the situation that Sherry has noted. So I assume in the next few weeks, the finance chairs, co-finance chairs will be sitting down with department heads and starting to go through the line-by-line budget aspects of it. Is that the process? And then eventually, when that's finished, it will come back to council for presentation?
Yes, that's what we had done in the past, and also in the past, the finance chairs also accumulated questions or concerns from other councillors and expressed them and tried to get some of the answers at that point too, and brought them back. So that would be one opportunity there. Could make the presentations at council table itself more, I don't know, useful, I don't know. But definitely, yes, at the discretion of the co-chairs, let us know, and then we can arrange to have the appropriate people in place for meetings and that. That's it. Yeah. You want to-
Okay. These ones were separate ones. The water works one is just 3 pages, and then the wastewater is just 1. It should be right at the back. There again, like I say, it would, the same thing about the salaries would apply. The other one that I have noted on my copy here for, it's the utilities, and there again, I don't know why, but the hydro the budget seemed very, very high compared to the actuals, and I don't know what assumptions they used for their hydro. Like I say, I don't think the rates dropped that much, but so I don't know. But that is one you will notice all the way through, that a lot of the utility ones are lower.
Yeah, we did have quite a few questions with that last year. We were given a number, and I don't think that we deviated from that. And I think that was in, if you guys can correct me, I think it was probably in February we got the first number, and we were told that that would be the percentage increase. If it had changed after that, it was not communicated to the departments.
Same, like I say, the wastewater ones would be the same, the salaries, the wastewater obviously is the one with the insurance proceeds, so that, you'll see that reflected in there. But other than that, like I say, basically the same assumptions.
As with many of the other areas in the town, there are a large number of accounts. We do try to rationalize them, but we also try to be very careful in what we get rid of. There are two considerations. One is that we do want to track the cost of an item, a service, an expense, whatever, as accurately as we can over the years. So that means that sometimes you do keep some extra accounts. The other part is that still you do want to be able to go back in time and try to attribute it. And it's easier if we keep those accounts. We can hide them, but what you see here is a good snapshot of what we actually deal with, yeah.
And actually, you'll notice that the 15 and the 16 for the wastewater didn't have any numbers because prior to 17, it was part of the tax levy.
Questions? None? You're awful good. Where do we go from here? No questions?
So would wastewater and the water budget be approved in advance of the operating budget? Or is it all gonna be part of the same process? Cause when we have set the rates for, like for water,
I think you do want to go through your capital with your water and wastewater to determine, because that will affect quite a bit of it. I think it'd be wiser to go through that.
and then get on to wastewater and then water, okay.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
We have a motion for adjournment.
It's moved by Councillor Rick Owens, seconded by Councillor Casey Owens. The council adjourn its finance meeting to an in-camera meeting to discuss, pursuant to Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act, 3 items of potential litigation and 1 item of proposed acquisition of land.
All in favor? Done.